Hi everyone, this is Dreaming Seiðr and the World Tree Yggdrasill. I'm Marissa Lovett and I'm very happy to be part of this Solstice Summit. All the presenters have been really awesome and I'm just going to basically be talking about a couple of things about how we can use symbols and practices from the Scandinavian traditions to understand our dreams and understand how we're actually interacting with the other world, the shamanic other world when we're dreaming, and what we can kind of do with that, and how that relates to the Norse practice of Seiðr. Hey Kirsten, good morning. So with my sister Kirsten, I have a group called Shamanic Earth Medicine, and we teach basically basic shamanic skills, but we've also been teaching something called Dreaming in the Nine Worlds, which I'll talk a little bit about at the end of the talk. Oh, cool. Yay. Thank you for letting me know that you can hear me and see me. Wonderful. So I'm getting over a cold. I feel great, but I sound terrible. So what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to just start out with asking my spirits for a little bit of help. Then we'll do a very short practice, and then I'll get into my talk. My talk is just basically going to cover three areas. The first area is basically traditional types of dreaming that come from the Scandinavian traditions, like that every dream you have isn't the same kind of dream. Secondly, I'm going to talk a little bit about symbols that are as old as the Norse sagas from 1,000 years ago, that as late as the early 2000s were still being used by people in Iceland. So I'm going to talk a little bit about those symbols and how when they come up in your dreams, what they may be talking to you about. And then finally, I'm going to talk about how does all this relate to Seiðr and the Nine Worlds and just the shamanic world in general. So I'm excited to share this with you, and I'm just going to go ahead and ask for some help. So if you're in a place now where you can relax and close your eyes and not like have to drive or do anything where you need to pay attention, I'd love for you to join me in this very short guided practice that I'm going to do. Otherwise, if you're driving or need to do pay attention, this is not going to be a very long practice, and you can come back to it later. Hi. Hey. Thank you all for showing up live. I know this is kind of an awkward time, but we're going to go into a little bit of a practice right now. Lagus Rido. Lagus guides me to the dream. Algis shields betwixt and between. Vilge guides to my desir. In the dream my weird is clear. So I want you, if you're comfortable, to become aware of the area around your throat. This is your throat center or throat chakra. And in the middle is a beautiful candle flame, surrounded by an even more beautiful lotus. This candle flame is projecting a light out in front of you, in front of your throat, maybe a foot or two in front of you. And this road of light is one that you can walk upon. And so I want you to begin to walk with your guided helpers, whoever you trust the most, down this road of light, this path of light, towards a beautiful winter wood. There are tall trees around you, a beautiful carpet of brown leaves covers the moss that once was earlier this year. There may be snow, but it's not on the path that you're on. And before you is a round well surrounded by a short circular stone wall. In your hand is a leaf, and as you look at this leaf, you may find that your intention to understand your dreaming better is written upon it. Now, as you get closer to the well and you're standing before the stone wall, kneel down because the stone wall is quite low, and gazing into the water, allow your hand to reach over the wall and drop your leaf into the dark, still water. Allow the leaf to fall down and watch it float and then gently sink into the depths. This is your dream intention, and it has been received. If you can, allow your gaze to go soft and just stare into the water for a moment. And now you may find yourself to be a little bit more relaxed. And you may lie down next to the well, connected to your dream intention, on the soft bed of dried leaves. And if you're comfortable lying on your side, you may lie on your side and put your hand directly onto the leaves so that they silhouette your fingers with the patterns that the folding leaves make over one another. And just keep staring at your hand, surrounded by the leaves, until your vision gets tired and you see something else. What did you see? Where did you go? And now return to looking at your hand on the leaves. And when you're ready, gently get up on your knees and then on your feet and brush the leaves off your clothing and thank the spirits of the well and your spirit helpers. And then turning around and seeing the candlelight in the distance, begin to leave the well behind as you walk on the path of light that the candle flame makes, going closer and closer to the candle as the flame gets larger and you leave the well and the woods behind. And finally, as the flame is right before you, merge with the flame, step into the flame, and return to your body and to your ordinary consciousness. And when you're ready, and you feel at home once again in your body, open your eyes. So I want to go ahead and if you still feel any energy at all, what I do is I like to just put my hands together and then place them on either my heart or on my legs. So we're going to talk today about how to create a prophetic dream journal, working with the tradition of Seiðr, the symbols from the Scandinavian tradition, and dreaming. Oh, I'm so glad. That was wonderful. Thank you for that. Thank you for participating. That's lovely. Yeah, and if you have any experiences that you feel like sharing, you're welcome to leave that in the comments. Unfortunately, I can't see all of your names, but I will definitely reply to everyone, or you can reach out to me personally if you prefer, and I'll leave my contact information at the end of the talk. So animistic traditions are basically alive and well, and they've continued in, as I've mentioned, in Iceland up until the early 2000s when I began to do some research. A wonderful book that I read that I'm going to talk about later on talks about how there's great continuity between the symbols that you see in the old sagas, like the Icelandic sagas and the Eddas, and the symbols that you hear people from Iceland talking about. So dreaming for people in Iceland is a way of getting information, especially about the future. And so it's very important to understand the dream symbols because a lot of people don't necessarily, sometimes people have clairvoyant dreams where it's like a movie. They see something that's going to happen in the future and then it happens. But in Iceland, there's a strong tradition of using symbols to do that. And because of that, we're going to be working with symbols today. So first, we want to know about kind of like the different types of dreams. And these both have to do with the old sagas, like the stories you can read from 1,000 years ago, and things that are happening today. So in the dreaming traditions, there are different kinds of dreams. One is called Dramspa, and please forgive me, I don't speak Icelandic very well or Old Norse. This means a dream that's filled with visions, like where the spirits come to you and talk to you. Verdremi, which is a dream of the future. That's a clairvoyant dream. Dagdraumur, which is like daydreaming. Visions can come, like predictive visions can come in daydreams. So in Iceland and in the Scandinavian traditions, people pay attention to their daydreams. Mara, which is the nightmare. This is like a very specific malevolent spirit that's almost like sleep paralysis. It's thought to stay on people's chests and take them on a dream journey that they don't want to go on to a bad place. And there was a tradition of taking stones that look like this, like with a natural hole in them. And this was called a hag stone. And the reason why it was called a hag stone is because Mara was thought to be a hag. And so this stone was hung up to prevent Mara from attacking you. The next one is called clairvoyant dreaming, Skugginn. This is basically just clairvoyant sight, period. But it's a person who's comfortable with the dark because they can see the spirits that other people can't see, but that are uncomfortable for people. And then there's another one called, it's a more complicated idea, which is basically seeking a namesake, like in other words, a name for your baby based on a deceased relative or friend. And then there's another type called Draumspakker, which is basically a dream speaker, a person who like understands what dreams mean. You can go to them and they can help you interpret them if you can't yourself. Then finally, probably the most shamanic is Gandrith. And Gandrith really means wand rider. So, because Gand is like Gandr, which is like a form of magic that uses a wand. So this is like the most modern image of this would be a witch riding a broom. That's Gandrith. So I'm going to talk a little about seeking a namesake through dreaming, just so you can kind of understand this a little bit. Oh yes, I've heard of the hag. Oh cool, good. So there's a strong idea in Iceland that, and in Scandinavia in general, that the dead are not to be ignored. And this is very animistic. So basically, if you refuse a request from a dream, and usually it's like the great-grandparents or the grandparents who come to the pregnant woman in the dream, or the father in the dream before the baby is born, and they're basically saying, we want you to name the child this. They're giving some of their ancestral protection to the child. So if you don't listen, it's like you're kind of not letting your child have the healthiest start that it can have from a spiritual level. This is a very common animistic tradition because it's thought that the ancestors come back as the descendants, or some piece of them comes back. So with the Maya, there's this idea that the old ones that died are sprouting again. Excuse me. So in other words, a name carries certain characteristics: power, quality, affects. So namesakes are sometimes like they draw on that power. So one woman said in this book that I'm going to tell you about later, you don't let a dead person down. You may not have listened to that person when they're alive, but when they're dead, you definitely listen to them. And dreaming is a vehicle for that to happen. So this is a very specific type of dreaming that's done in Iceland, that's part of their tradition, that's also a little bit tied into ancestors. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about dream interpretation. So, okay, you have these dreams. How do you interpret them? The first thing that happens in Iceland, and this is true of any dreaming culture, is that there's a tradition of dream sharing. Now, in some cultures, this is done every single morning. People wake up, they share their dreams. They don't really interpret them in the sense of a psychological interpretation. They're looking more for predictions. And usually they're about practical things. So I'm going to talk later about some ways that these are used practically. But you definitely share the dreams around the kitchen table, or around the fire, or whatever it is, the hearth that people have. So there are shared dream symbols, and then there are individual dream symbols. And a person is encouraged to get to know their own dream symbols and to make their own dream interpretation language. So there's a couple of classic Norse animal spirits that are in the old sagas. Ox, stag, fox, bear, polar bear, swan, eagle, falcon, wolf. These are all common dream symbols that come in that usually have to do with ancestors or important beings who are trying to communicate something, but they also mean something that everybody in the culture kind of knows what that is. So there's a couple of different ways that you can dream of animals in this tradition. One of them is to dream of something called your guardian animal spirit, which is like called the fylgir, or a fetch. Sometimes it's called the hooker. The problem is that fylgir also sometimes means guardian angel. So it's like the words change depending on who you're talking to. There are dreams of domesticated animals and dreams of undomesticated animals. So you're going to see both in this list. So now I'm going to talk just a little tiny bit about what these symbols might mean. So dreaming of a wolf, eagle, or bear in the sagas, and later even in modern interpretations, what had to do with like status, or like a really fierce, intense nature. So when they were telling the stories and they wanted to communicate to people, this person is like a real badass, they would maybe make a wolf show up in the story, or a bear or something like that, so that everybody knows, yeah, this person's like really intense, or that they're a high status person, like a jarl or king or something like that. I dream about cats, dogs, and horses quite a bit. Well, cool, because horses are definitely in my list. Bull or bear is basically a symbol of power, especially bear is inherited power. This is because, hold on for a minute. This is because bears are considered to be in Scandinavia a lot like people. They're sort of like If animals were people, they would be bears. And so there's like all these rules about how you interact with bears and stuff like that. So in the sagas, bear means like handing down power. Goat, because of its association with Thor, means peace, believe it or not, because Thor, although everybody knows that he's the one that kills the giants, he's also, and he's the thunderer, he also brings peace and prosperity, along with some of the other spirits. Another dream symbol is birds. Birds can be messengers. Raven is a specific symbol that has to do with the god Odin, although it can also have to do, sometimes it's a death messenger, sometimes it has to do with the other world, like ancestors who are trying to talk to you. With the god Odin, it can have to do with memory or thought. Swan can mean beauty. Horse can mean ancestors or weather. Bird can also mean people in the person's life. In other words, like if you dream about birds all the time in Scandinavia, or at least in Iceland, you might be looking around for people in your life who have the qualities of however the bird is acting. Cattle can mean rain, because a lot of these have to do with rain. Sheep can mean weather or themselves. Then there are colors. So, for example, white can mean snow coming. And this is a place where, like, in other words, there's a lot of snow here. So they need to understand the weather. So in other words, like, let's say you dream of sheep. The way they put it together is they go white sheep. Okay, that means a snow is coming. Or white bear, it's coming from a certain direction, because bears are associated with certain directions. So it's like, here's where you're taking the symbolic elements of the language, you're putting them together to make meanings that aren't in a dream book. So let me answer some of these questions. How about unicorns? Oh yeah, I mean, basically, my feeling about these dreams is that sometimes they're spirit helpers, because sometimes people have unicorn spirit helpers, or this is a very important message, because when you dream of the spirit beings that aren't necessarily on this earth, like, you know, griffins or unicorns or dragons or things like that, these are very powerful, like, spirit beings that are coming in from the other world to dialogue with a person. So I might pay extra attention to that particular dream. Yeah, so cows and horses, because they're associated with grazing, they can mean either rain coming, which means, you know, which is good for grass, or a drought. So you can see how things change. Like they're a symbol of things changing. Then, of course, there is like practical dreams, like lost livestock. These people, a lot of them are like fishermen, or they raise livestock. So fishermen might literally dream about where the fish are going to be. People who raise livestock, if they lose a sheep, might dream about where the sheep is. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about dream interpretation based on the old sagas. So here's the saga of Gunnlaug Serpent-Tongue. There's a man who dreams about a beautiful swan, and two eagles are like ripping each other apart. And so this guy goes to this dream interpreter and he goes, "What's going on with my dream?" And the dream interpreter says, "These two eagles are two men who are important men. They're going to kill each other over your beautiful daughter." So you see how, like, in the old, like, sagas, this dream would be used, and the entire audience would know what the dream symbols are, and it would be used to predict a part of the story, the saga, where that exact thing happens. Okay, so now we're going to talk finally about actual dreaming and how this, you know, eventually relates to Seiðr. So let me see. I sometimes get dragons coming in during meditation. Yeah, like those meditative states, that would be more like what they call daydreaming, because you're opening up the doors a little bit so that something from the other world can come in. And those visions are considered to be just as important as the ones that you receive while dreaming. Because in a lot of animistic cultures, the waking dreaming divide is not as intense. So things that happen that are synchronistic in waking life, or visions that come in waking life and dreaming, are sort of all kind of connected. So Gandhrith is basically dream journeying, like intending to journey. And it would be called night faring forth, because going on a dream journey or a spirit journey is called faring forth. And there's a lot of mentions of this in the old stories, and obviously modern practitioners do this as well. This is where the dreaming begins to get a little bit more shamanic. But even just regular dreams that you think are no big deal, you're still going into the other world every night. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how that works. So if you want to have an important dream, the dream teacher Kari Turing suggests that you set your intention to dream that and say, I want to have a special dream. Then you might, through either prayer or meditation or just being quiet, make contact with a prior important dream. So let's say you want to have a dream about a unicorn. So what you would just sort of get quiet and you would think about your past powerful dreams with the unicorn and just sort of make contact with that dream or with whatever is going on. And then you just allow yourself to ask to meet the unicorn in your dream and then lie down and go to sleep and have your dream. So if you have trouble remembering your dreams, you also ask for to remember it, because it's considered to be a part of spiritual warriorship in many different traditions to remember the dream. So then basically you go into your dream, and the final part is making a record. Now I do this two different ways. You can either have a dream journal, and that's going to be part of the free gift. It's a great way to do it. Or I also use a dream crystal. I use jade, and you put this underneath your pillow when you dream, and then when you wake up, you blow into it, and then put it in the sun, and that basically keeps it like the energy good. Another way to go into dreaming is to work with the Icelandic sigils. If you're having trouble feeling safe in your dreams, you might want to use this one. This is the Helm of Awe. There are magical spells that go with these, but I found that you can use them just as they are under your pillow, and they work fine. Was Gondr a person found in the sagas too? Gondrith. Oh, you mean Gunlag Serpentung? Or do you mean Gondrith? Okay, Gondrith. That's Gondrith is a thing. It's like it might be a being. You might be right about that, but it's also like it's a thing too, a thing that you do, an action that you do, which is going out on the spirit into the spirit world with your wand, which staves and wands are like super important. Okay, so the first and most easiest way to track your dreams in the spirit world is to work with your spirit animal. Let's say it's your unicorn. Every time you dream about your unicorn, you know you're having a dream about your spirit animal. So these are very common animistic dreams. They're all over the sagas. They're in, people's, modern people have them all the time. And they're a way to stay in contact with the spirit world shamanically. Also, these dreams can bring a gift of power. In other words, you can wake up, you feel stronger, better. That's a very important message that this is like a power animal for you. Now, this is not Scandinavian. This part is core shamanism. But if you have one of these dreams and you keep having dreams about unicorns that are very empowering, then you might want to make some kind of offering or practice that keeps that spirit link strong, like even just lighting candles to it or something. I also, if your animal is an animal that's alive on this earth, you can do exercise and dedicate it to that animal. So if your animal likes to swim, you can swim and dedicate it to the animal. Or if your animal likes to run, same thing, or walk, or things like that. So now there's a simple way to figure out where you are in the other world. That has to do with shamanism. Shamans believe that there are 3 levels, and if you even go and look at the old Siberian drums, you'll see that the drum is like shaped like a circle, but there'll be like 2 horizontal lines. And that shows the 3 levels of the worlds. The first one is the lower world. And for dreaming, since we're dealing with the psychological thing, we're talking about usually ancestors, especially unresolved ancestors, and emotions. The middle world, that's more practical day to day, like day residue stuff, or, I need to solve a problem. And then upper world is spirit teachers. So even though the spirit tree of the Norse, Yggdrasill, has 9 realms, it still fulfills that basic 3-world tripartite universe model that is in core shamanism. So another way to do this, if you want to sort of figure out where you are in your dreams, and you don't want to track it in terms of, was my dream about emotions, was my dream about practical stuff, or was my dream a message from spirit helpers, is you, like, let's say you dream about a house. If you're in the basement, you're in the lower world. If you're on the first floor, you're in sort of the middle world, practical concerns. And if you're upstairs or on the roof, you're in the upper world. So that's a way that some people dream about being in their home a lot, and sometimes that can be a way you can track kind of where you are in the other world. So finally, I want to talk a little bit about the actual Scandinavian world tree and how it's used in Seiðr. So I don't know if you can see this or not. This is a map. Let me see if I can get it in closer. Of the world tree. Down here are the 3 roots. Up here is the top where the eagle is. The same thing is here. You can sort of see the eagle up here, and down here are the roots. Whenever you learn Seiðr, contemporary Seiðr, because you're going to be going to the 9 worlds, you learn to make a map. And that's part of what we've been working on in my dreaming class, is figuring out like where in the other world we are when we're dreaming, because it's important to understand where you are, because it's kind of where your consciousness is spending its time. And you may want to work with that realm or the beings who live in that realm to like work out those issues and have more freedom and more resolution and integration. So there's a couple of kind of interesting psychological ways to work with the 9 realms. This one comes from a guy who, a Vicky and a Seiðr mother named Kurt Hoogstraat, who did this wonderful book called Contemporary Seiðr. And basically he talks about areas of life that have to do with the 9 worlds. And so I'll give you a little bit of an example. Midgardr, which is in the middle, that's the Middle Earth, where we are right now, where we spend our lives. And so Midgardr is like practical concerns, like where did I put something, that kind of thing. Alfheimr, which is the world of the elves, that is basically if you're dealing with an intellectual problem, you're trying to learn something, you're trying to bring something into the world, like a new idea, you might be hanging out with the elves some. The opposite of the elves are the dark elves, which is Svartalfheimr. And these would be dealing with the unconscious or really strong emotions. And so these are kind of like the dwarves. Helheimr is where the ancestors are. This is definitely in the roots of the tree. You're definitely in the lower world here. Jotunheimr are like the powerful forces of nature. These ones tend to be a little closer to Midgard, Middle Earth, where we are, because it's nature. And so like if you dream about a thunderstorm, or you dream about a powerful snowstorm, you dream about rain or things like that, or even, bears or things like that, you're kind of in that world of the giants that represent the elemental forces of nature. And then finally, Asgardr or Asgard, where the gods live, that's considered to be higher consciousness. So you're like the spirit dreams you have might be, you may not be there exactly, but you're interacting with those types of energies. So now I want to talk a little bit about how I've been able to interpret some of these dreams and how other people have been able to interpret some of these dreams in a modern context. Because in Iceland, what you would be doing is people have a dream, they talk to their family about it, they pick up their dream encyclopedias, which everyone has. They have this shared language of these different animals and colors that everybody kind of like understands. And then they start putting together the meanings, almost like the way you would if you took 2 tarot cards and put them together, or 2 Lenormand cards and put them together. Like, the symbols become more than just the individual parts kind of thing. But here, you're going a little deeper, and you're going into something that's more shamanic, which is Seiðr. And Seiðr is like the Scandinavian shamanic practice or shamanistic practice. It's basically a shamanic embodiment where the practitioner, called a ruba, basically is a medium for the spirits to come through, or she may sing or chant like what's going on in the journey that she goes on. But she goes to do specific things, as in shamanism, to recover soul parts, to remove curses, to find out where the problems are, or how to solve a problem like why aren't there fish? We need to be able to fish, and there aren't any fish. So she's, or to predict someone's future. So she's basically going into the other world to do this. Both women and men can do this. I just tend to associate it with women, so I use the word she. So how does dreaming fit in with Seiðr? Well, it's complicated because in the old stories, there is at least one story where instead of being a practice performed in front of people, kind of like a seance, the way a lot of Seiðr was done, sometimes the vulva would be given her question and then she would go off and dream. And in this dream, it wasn't like a normal dream. She was going off, Gandri, with her spirit helpers, maybe even shape-shifting into a real animal or sharing consciousness with a real animal to see what was going on, or going into one of the 9 worlds to see what was going on. And there are actual like stories in the Eddas where the spirits actually, people go into the other world specifically to interact with giants or dwarves or other people to basically get answers. There's like healing that can be done if you pay attention to like where these dreams are going all the time. You can kind of figure out like, I'm dreaming about my unconscious all the time. I'm dreaming about really strong emotions. Maybe I'm like in Svartalfheimr. Maybe I'm working with the dwarves or the dark elves. Or maybe I'm working with blocks, like the world of the frost giants. Or maybe I need creative inspiration, fire. So I'm working with the world of the fire of creation. So once you know the 9 worlds, you can find your way around. But even if you don't care about the 9 worlds or Scandinavian mysticism, just knowing that the 3 worlds of, emotions and unconscious being in the lower world, practical things being in the middle world, and inspiration and spirit being in the upper world, it can help you track where you are in your dreaming. And you can start to see patterns. I spend a lot of my time with emotions. I spend a lot of time figuring out where I put my car keys in my dreams. I spend a lot of time interacting with spirits. You kind of know where you're on. Okay, so now I'm going to give you like a couple of examples. One of the reasons why I want to have dreams about the other world is because, specifically the 9 worlds, is because I want to be able to go back there again. This is a technique I learned from the dream teacher Robert Moss, but it's used in other cultures as well. So I had a dream where I asked the deity Odin to help me go to Niflheimr, which is the land of the frost giants. And I wanted to meet a frost giant because I wanted to understand a block that I had about something. So in my dream, I basically was having trouble actually getting to the other world. So I saw this ritual object, which is my dream crystal. And it was on what looked like, when people have yard sales, it was on a table in a yard sale. And a technique I learned about dreaming is that when you see one of your ritual objects in a dream, jump into it. And it will take you into a deeper level of your dream, which I did. And so once I did that, then I was finally in the world of the frost giants, which was very, very cold, dark, like lots of snow, like snow up to my knees kind of snow. And all of a sudden, this gigantic wolf appears. Like, this wolf is like the size of a house. It's got like frost dripping off of it. It's super intense looking. And then Odin shows up and he's like, follow me. So I very happily followed him. And then he turned into Santa Claus, which was hilarious. So yeah, that was great. So another example of this is one time I asked, can you show me about the Cave of Animals? This was another place that I wanted to go to in the other world. And I dreamed of large dogs, like hunting dogs. And when I woke up, I remembered that in the old sagas, in the old stories, the giants, these elemental forces of nature who help with really powerful problems like knowing who your ancestors are, or um, lifting incredible burdens that you just can't lift by yourself, things like that. They usually have wolves or dogs as companions. And if you want to get on their good side, you have to like be friends with their dogs. So that was like a really interesting experience for me to get to know that part of the world a little bit better, so that when I went back into my actual journeying, I could relate to those beings in a better way. And if you're going to do Seiðr, you have to have good relationships with the spirits. Otherwise, because the spirits do the work. And so dreaming can be a way of going in and making those relationships. So it's incredibly important. And then finally, I asked a question one time. I'm sort of stuck. What do you want me to be doing with my gifts? And I dreamed of a baby bear walking with a large bear. Well, if you remember back to the earlier sort of list of animals, bear can mean power or status, but it also can mean something you inherit. So then I actually saw in the same dream an ancestor who was holding me a mala bead, um, uh, made out of moldavite necklace, a necklace made out of moldavite of mala beads, and who said, I want you to be working on some issues that are going on out in the world. So I was able to take these two dream symbols together and realize that there was something about my inherited abilities that needed to be used out in the world. And even though there was basically a necklace from another tradition, I found with the Germanic cultures that they're so inclusive that, even though you have to work with their spirits in a certain way, it's not like, they have a problem with some other spirit from some other culture showing up. So they're kind of like the opposite of like the way sometimes white supremacists present heathenry, as if like, it's this white people only thing, because they're totally not like that. Okay, so I'm just going to stop talking for like 1 second and take a breath and just see if anybody has a question or if any of this was confusing. The main thing I would just want you to know, to reiterate, is if you don't do another thing, just try to track if you have important dreams about your spirit helpers, and also when those dreams come. Are they purely about emotions? Are they primarily about your everyday problems, practical problems, or are they primarily about spirit, actual spirit teachings? Because those dreams, the ones where your spirit helpers come, those are the important ones. So if they're ancestors or like animals like unicorns, bears, whatever, those are ones you want to pay attention to first, no matter what tradition you're in, whether you get interested in Scandinavian traditions or not. So I'm just going to basically, oh, and also if you want to go ahead and anytime you want to use the well meditation, feel free to use it. It's a really great way to plant an intention for a dream. So like, I want to dream about a unicorn, just in your mind's eye, write that on the leaf, take it to the well, put it in. So because I really love doing this stuff, because I had such a blast teaching Dreaming in the 9 Worlds, and we're going to be doing more this next year. We're going to be going in deeper and doing actual work that is a lot closer to magic and Seiðr. I have created this free journal. Now, the journal is a PDF, and I'll be putting it up in a minute when I get done with my links. But I just wanted you to be able to see what was in it when it's printed out. So this is what it looks like when it's printed out. So it's Dreaming Seiðr and the World Tree Yggdrasill. So it's got little things in it like this 9 Worlds checklist here, which you won't be able to see, but and then underneath it is a list of basically dream symbols that we went over, different types of dreams, so that you don't have to remember the different ones, so you can tell the difference between what to do about a nightmare and what to do about a dream journey, or what to do about a message from your ancestors, especially about naming a child. That's a really important one. And the importance of daydreaming. You want to make sure that you understand that too. And then just a little bit about hagstones. and a really good quote about how hagstones were traditionally used, and a little bit about the fylgja or fetch. And then after that, there's a couple of pages to write your dreams down on if you want to. Because the important thing that you want to do is you want to write your dreams down or record them in some way, because this is the way you honor them. And the spirits will send you more dreams if you honor the ones that they give you already. Now, if you really want to honor the dreams the most, the thing you can do that's the most honoring of your dreams is to take action on them. That is the thing that they like the best. But action can mean a lot of things. It can mean drawing your dream, or it can mean writing it down. So these are all good things. The checklist is really helpful. Okay, cool. So before I finish, I just want to say I want to thank Christina for these awesome summits, and for all of her help. I want to thank all the other presenters who are great. I'm looking forward to the great people that are going to be today. And I hope to see some of you, or all of you, either in Shamanic Earth Medicine, or on my YouTube channel, or my Facebook or Instagram pages. Many blessings. Oh, wait, sorry. I just want to thank my spirit helpers. Thank you all for watching. Blessings.